Welcome everyone to our ASL Club Zoom Q&A session tonight. We were just sorting out some technical difficulties. It looks like with the different technologies that we are using, we are only able to spotlight one video at a time, which is fine. So if you are not in gallery view at the moment, if you're in speaker view, hopefully you should be seeing the interpreter. The name on her screen is Marlaine Davis. She is wearing a green shirt and a headset right now. So hopefully you're seeing her on your screen. Please let me know in the chat if you are not seeing her for any reason. And that message is for my ASL students there. So first of all, again, I want to welcome you to our meeting here tonight, being sponsored by the ASL Club at Pacific University. The club president, President Sydney Tanaka, is presiding over this meeting, and she asked me, the club advisor, to conduct the meeting tonight. Before we introduce our guest speakers, Terry DeCamp and Steve Peck here tonight, I want to turn the time over to our club president, Sydney, for an announcement that she had. Sydney, if you can unmute your mic, we'll go ahead and leave the interpreter spotlighted so that our guest speakers can see the interpretation.
Can everyone hear me? Okay, cool. So I'm Sydney. I'm the ASL Club president.
Can't hear anything.
I'm Kat. I'm the VP of ASL Club.
You said the word here. I can't hear anything.
Okay, anyway.
And I'm Brooke. I'm the secretary of ASL Club.
So we just wanted to send out a notice that anyone who is not graduating in this coming May, if you are interested in being on the ASL Club exec board for next year, then to please fill out the Google form that I have given to Professor Stamps, and also that our secretary will send out, and it will also be on the ASL Club announcements page that Professor Stamps usually has for everyone. Yeah, so I would say if you're going to be a senior next year or any other year, yeah, any other year would be good too, because we need a lot of people, because it will only be Kat.
Yeah, we're both
graduating, so a lot of our exec team will be gone next year, so Kat is somewhat by herself, and so we would like more people if you're interested. That is all I have to say. Okay, Professor Stamps.
I'm not graduating. Not graduating. I graduated a long time ago.
Thank you. This is Professor Stamps again speaking here. Let me go to gallery view for a moment here. And I'm going to go ahead. Oh, by the way, that that address that President Sydney just mentioned, I will email all that out to you later tonight so you can see that. And I am going to welcome Steve Peck and ask him to give a brief introduction to introduce himself, and then I'll turn it over to Terry DeCamp for her to introduce herself. And I'll ask, Steve, did you want to SimCom, or did you want to have the interpreter voice interpret for you?
I can. SimCom can. If Terry is fine with that, if interpreter is fine with that, fine, can. So I'm going to test my voice. You hear me or not? Okay. Means you're not or deaf. I'm only one. Me and Terry. That's it. All right. My name is Steve Peck. My name signed what? Peck. Why Peck? Why? I pick on people. Not true. I'm just to make sure I do the right thing. Make sure it's straight. That's it. Anyway, I work for the Office of Deaf Hard of Fame in the state of Washington. I'm a telecommunications relations administrator for Washington State. I used to work for Tektronix. If some of you are familiar with that company, I used to work there for about 25 years before ODHH hired me to help implement what's called Washington Video Relay Services. That was back in 2002. That's before VR services started. So we developed a WAN-based platform back then. So my journey has been interesting, doing this and that. I was involved with the deaf blind services, helping implement what's called communication vaccinator services, developing a QR code stamp, thumbprint stamp, so the deaf blind can sign papers on an iPhone to click off the time, start time and end time. So that's what I did. There are different other things I did, but I don't want to too long because I know Terry wants to introduce herself too. So I think that's enough for me now. You can ask questions later. Okay.
Thank you, Steve. I was speaking with my microphone muted. Thank you. Now, you should see the interpreter on your screen right now. I will now turn the time over to Terry so she can introduce herself.
Sorry, interpreter, I need to change to gallery view to be able to see Terry. No, now I see her. Okay, my turn. All right, well, my name is Terry, and my name sign is like this because I smile. So my last name is DeCamp, just like camping, with a D. So you see how there's the D, and I make the sign for a tent. So that's the name sign for my last name. So I work as a teacher's assistant with deaf children who are mainstreamed, and I've done that for the last 25 years. Currently, I'm working one-on-one with children with behavior issues, and I do, right now, I work with another child in the afternoon who requires tube feeding. So I help with that tube feeding. And I have about 4 more years until I can retire, and I'm very much looking forward to that. I can't wait. So that's me. So I want to let you know that the captions. So I wanted to let you know that Terry is my cousin. I wasn't sure if you were aware of that. And Terry says, yes. Did you know that we are cousins? Yeah, I think we've been, what, like 6th or 7th cousins, something like that? Yeah. And just...
I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Sorry. So
okay. And this is the interpreter. Stephen, if you want to SimCom for yourself, your microphone is off. So when you want, if you would like to speak for yourself, you need the microphone on.
I didn't want you all to hear the cats here are meowing. We have 2 of them in the house where they're meowing, so I want to intend on it. So I turned it off for a moment.
Okay, thank you. This is Professor Stamp speaking again through the interpreter. Thank you, both Terry and Steve, for introducing yourselves. Now, in a moment, I'm going to open up the Zoom chat to our participants here so that they can type questions in the Zoom chat. But first, I would like to ask a question of each of our guest speakers. First of all, I would like to ask Terry and then Steve. And my question is this. If you could only tell one thing, these ASL students that are here tonight, if you could tell them the most important thing they need to know about deafness or the deaf community or deaf culture or ASL, what is the one thing that you would want them to know? And I want to go ahead and ask Terry that question first. And then over to Steve.
Okay, well, you want to know like what happened with me as I was growing up in my in deaf culture or whatever you're looking for that and professional steps. Yes, if you did. Well, I want to let you know that when I was a child, I was not allowed to sign, even though I could not hear. And as I grew up, I had a deaf brother and cousins who also were deaf, but we were not allowed to sign as well. We were forced to be in an oral only educational philosophy, which frankly sucked. So I learned fingerspelling when I was 12. And I was allowed to at least fingerspell, but I was not allowed to sign at home at all. And when I went to the deaf school, again, there was no signing allowed. So I really didn't understand what deaf culture meant. When I was in high school, I went to mainstream high school with no interpreter, and I honestly was so lost. I didn't understand what it meant to have an interpreter. I basically was expected to learn my education through writing notes back and forth, and I didn't learn anything. So I did have somebody come a visiting professor who was encouraging me to go to OSD, but my parents would not allow it. And, you know, I was married to someone who knew a little bit of sign. And as I grew up, I started to meet a couple of deaf people. And in 2007, I joined a dragon boat team where, you know, we competitively rowed, and there were team members that were all deaf. And that was the first time I was maybe introduced to the idea of a deaf culture and a deaf identity. And that's when I really started learning how to sign. And that became so important to me. And being able to get involved in some of the other groups, DNO, what were some of the other organizations? Just quite a few deaf organizations. I had a women's only group that I went to, and that we would go, we'd play cards, we'd do service stuff. And that's where I learned about my culture and my identity. So that's pretty much my story.
Thank you so much, Terry. No matter how many times I hear similar experiences from my deaf friends, it's always shocking to me to hear how, you know, they weren't allowed to sign from a young age. I would like to ask the same question from Steve. If you could tell one thing to the attendees, the ASL students we have here tonight, what is the most important thing that you would have to tell them?
Well, I'm thinking about what I should say that wakes you up. I grew up rural. I didn't learn science until about my first year of college. I went to Portland Community College at the time. And I learned ASL 3 months before my class started. So that was a quick lesson for me. But gradually, over time, I was able to develop some more skills and abilities. Like Terry in school, lip reading is not great. Don't ever ask me to lip read anything.
That's right.
Ask. Because lip reading itself is, I probably guess right about 25% of the time. The rest is, I have to guess work. Think what you're trying to tell me. See. My escape from hearing world was what? Playing baseball. I played baseball, basketball, football for many years through high school. mostly playing baseball. That was my escape from the trials of life with the hearing world. Try to the hearing world and try to focus on deaf world. Right. I have many deaf friends and many hearing friends too. Some of my friends were basketball players who back then played in the NBA, played for UCLA and some other colleges. Great friends. We, for many years, played basketball together many times. But anyway, for education, I majored in electronics technology to begin with. Later started back to school again to learn computer science. Then when I was hired by ODH in Washington State, I went back to school again for certified program management. Maybe that was enough time to become a lawyer. I don't know. It's been an interesting journey, really. I'm grateful for the opportunity to have to learn science in college. And ever since, I've been studying. I do tactical interpret. I'm certified for a tactical interpret for deaf blind. Have a lot of participation involved with that. Very supportive of deaf blind community. So everybody's different. Many deaf individuals prefer some sign and speaking at the same time. Some other individuals prefer direct sign only. So it varies from person to person. Like you all know, each of us is like a snowflake. We're different, right? Snowflake way, yes, we're different.
Yes.
You, me, all you students will probably say, Steve, why do you say this? Why do you say that? Maybe you will say, maybe you'll be puzzled when I say something, maybe. You know, in the deaf culture, English is always a struggle. In high school, I had to read books because we didn't have interpreters there. I read books so much just to keep up with class. I was fortunate enough to get a CB average in high school. But by the time I learned studying, went to college again, my GPA went up to 3.5 to 3.8 rounds. So studying helped me through interpreting sentences to understand better, to improve my grades better. So that was the key change in life, was learning science. So I think that's enough for now. I don't want to exaggerate forever.
Okay, thank you. Thank you both, Terry and Steve. This is Professor Stamps speaking again. Thank you for those answers. Now what I would like to do is I would like to invite each of our students who are in attendance tonight to, in the Zoom chat, type a question. Each of them has had the opportunity to prepare one question they have, but we wouldn't have enough time to answer every single question. So what I would like them to do is at this time type a question in the Zoom chat, and this will not only give everyone an opportunity to ask their own individual question, but it will give our guest speakers, Terry and Steve, the opportunity to pick and choose which questions they would like to address the most there. So students, please type your questions in the Zoom chat at this time. And while they're doing that, I would like to ask Steve a follow-up question. You mentioned about the deaf-blind community within the deaf community. Could you educate us, tell us more about the services the state of Washington provides for those members in the deaf community that are deaf-blind?
Okay. In Washington State, we have a large deaf-blind community. Probably maybe 400, 500 deaf-blind in Seattle-based area. There's deaf-blind living around the state, of course, but deaf-blind, their form of communication is normally through tactical communication has a field communication. They touch your hands and we communicate. Some deafblind read Braille, but that's only about 20% of the deafblind population. 20% can read Braille. Braille is really difficult to read, learn and read. I tried to learn Braille myself. I failed. You have to learn to a dot, one dot, which that means another dot, three dots. Those are process you have to learn to memorize. So it takes approximately 3 years for a deafblind person to really learn Braille. Well enough to shift to what's called comprehension Braille. That's a grade 2 Braille. So a lot of deafblind individuals are really insulated at best. They're insulated. Some have jobs for very different companies out there. We have a deafblind service center in Seattle, Washington, where she's deafblind herself. She leads the group. She established services, interpreting services, tackle interpreting services. We have what's called communication vaccinator service, which uses VRS plus a tackle interpreter to help communicate through video. There's a variety of other things. Can't speak for everyone. Like I said, many deafblind are snowflakes too. They're different. They're different. Hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you, Steve. Now, I just realized as I was speaking about having the students type in the Zoom chat, I'm not sure everyone is able to see the Zoom. In particular, I'm not sure because Terry's joining us on an iPhone. What I would like to do is read through the questions. Okay, thank you. I'll read through the questions and Terry's saying that she's
they're just coming up pretty quickly.
Yeah,
on the iPhone.
Yes, Steve.
I have a question or comment. If you want to ask questions, maybe it would be best if you read the questions from the chat and the interpreters sign it so we can better respond to that better. I don't want to offend anybody.
Yes, sorry. Yes, that's exactly what I was about to suggest is why don't I go ahead and read through the questions in the chat, and I hope this won't be overwhelming, but then give you the opportunity to think about, I really want to answer that question there. So let me read through the questions that we have in the chat so far, and then we'll go over to Terry. Okay. So question, is it hard to constantly switch between ASL and written English since they are so different? That's one question. Why don't I do 3 questions at a time, then so it's not overwhelming. Another question. So the first one was about, is it difficult to switch back and forth between English and ASL? A second question, what does being deaf mean to you? And a third question, and again, Terry, you can decide which one of these you wish to answer or which ones. And the third question is, do you experience auditory fatigue? And I'll turn that over to Terry if she wants to answer any of those 3 questions.
Okay. Okay, what was the third again?
The third one is, do you experience auditory fatigue, which I believe, if I understand the question correctly, do you have times when, for example, if you use hearing aids, do you get tired of having to listen to the hearing world and so forth?
Oh, yes, okay. So my experience with using hearing aids is, when I was very young, I had those auditory trainers where you had, a big box on the front of your chest, and it went into your ears, and there was so much speech therapy training teaching me how to, make the variety of sounds. And my family would not sign at all. So it was strictly based on me trying to read their lips. And I had very limited access to language. You know, my brother and sister and my parents did not do any kind of like gesturing or any kind of like things to help me communicate. So the communication was extremely, you know, broken in my family. And so much of my time was always asking my family, you know, what did you say? What did you just say? And so frequently the answer was, well, I'll tell you later. And then of course, you know, you go later and you say, oh, what was it you were going to tell me? And they frequently would respond with, well, I've forgotten. So I felt so left out. I really hated that, you know, tell you later, constant message from my family. I felt so behind on family events and what was going on in my family. I remember one time I was invited to be with my family for Thanksgiving dinner, and we were all gathered around the table, and you know, they were serving the food and people were talking around the dinner table. And I asked my sister, you know, what was going on. I actually had previously gotten rid of my hearing aids because I didn't find that they benefited me at all. So I asked my sister what was going on, and you know, I was trying to talk to her, and right in the middle of our conversation, she turned away from me and started talking to my brother. And that was so offensive to me. I was so hurt by that. I frankly never, you know, was willing to accept any invitations to Thanksgiving dinners again. It was so difficult and so, frankly, boring. You know, my brother didn't have to, didn't like having to be the, you know, quote unquote family interpreter for me all the time. And I was so frustrated with my family because they could have learned sign and included me. But instead, they forced me to try to, you know, do this constant lip reading, which I have to say that that's where the fatigue was coming in, was trying to understand the lip reading it all the time. That's where I became so fatigued.
Thank you so much. And the more I think about our current format here, I think we probably should take it one question at a time and then let either of our guest speakers respond. So both to Steve and to Terry, and you can just let me know, raise your hand if you want to answer this next question in the Zoom chat. What is the biggest misconception that hearing people would have about being deaf?
Terry can.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and answer that question. You know, sometimes there's a lot of miscommunications and misunderstandings between hearing and deaf. When I try to, you know, like talk to my husband, we both use both oral communication and signing. And, you know, he tends to speak more frequently than he signs. And sometimes I have to, you know, he says, well, tell me what you said, or, you know, and, you know, we'll have that, you know, like constantly clarifying, what exactly did I say? Oh, no, that's not what I meant. And so it's not easy for me living in that quote unquote hearing world. I frequently feel very lost. So is that what was the question? I'm not sure if that was the right answer. Steve says, would you like me to answer as well?
Oh,
Look, I got big all of a sudden.
My experience of cemetery was similar. One of my challenges, my escape from hearing words. What? Sometimes our family has family reunions. We get together, have fun, go fishing or whatever. But do I go? No. What do? I take off and go to the DAF softball tournaments. Go there. Another story. We had a family Thanksgiving dinner together. I invited DAF friends to come with me because I don't want to be bored not being able to communicate with the family. So I invited. We had a good chat. Then my younger brother comes up and says, "What are you guys talking about?" I looked at my brother and I said, well, we're signing. And if you want to join and learn signing, fine, you can join and learn with us. But he decided, no, walked off to join the hearing group. That's okay. I laugh about that. Why I laugh about that is because that's his problem, not mine. My youngest sister signs. All my kids sign. But it's not appropriate for me to use my kids as interpreters in family gatherings. So I want them to enjoy their cousins, have fun, enjoy everything they want. So that's a hard part of family get-togethers. It's hard to communicate. Misunderstandings happen. My dad was famous for his jokes. Well, when I didn't understand the jokes, I would go up to him and say, "Dad, what did you say?" So, "Oh, Steve, I'll tell you later." And then later never happens. So just disappointments with family relationships. Now, not every deaf person has the same experience. Some deaf families sign. The whole family, mom and dad, and their brothers and sisters sign, which is neat. I wish I had that. I wish. But I can't wish for everything, I guess. I have to learn the hard way to accept some things and move on. Try to teach my family signs. My mother and I both went to sign classes together. We both communicated over the years in sign, so that was good. It was good. But my sibling, my brothers and sisters, my dad didn't learn sign enough to communicate. So I know there's some disappointment in family situations, but what can I do about that? There's not a lot I really can do. It's personal choice of family.
This is me, Terry. I wanted to add as well. Yeah, so my turn. So I am very grateful for my two children because they both can communicate with me. They both sign. And my grandmother's my children's grandmothers sign a little bit. And Steve, you were talking a little bit about family reunions and family gatherings. I remember one time my sister invited me to go to a party, a Tupperware party. You know what I'm talking about? Oh, I clicked the wrong thing. Anyway, so it was, a Tupperware party at her home, and I sat there while all the other, invitees were just talking. And when I was ready to go home, I actually hosted a Tupperware party in my home, and I invited all my deaf friends, and I invited my sister. And, my sister had that equivalent experience about not being able to understand anything that was going on at the party. And I just really felt like that was a fair thing for her to, the shoe be on the other foot.
If that happened to me, honestly, not me, no. I kind of will walk away. Hasta la vista, gone. That's what I normally would have done. When we invited friends to our home, we always chatted, we joked, we teased, we enjoyed each other. That was the fun part of being part of a deaf softball team, a deaf basketball team, things like that, where we get together. I've been to what's called grooms parties. I've gone there, and hey guys, I'm here. And then they say, oh, hi Steve, talk to you later. Oh, okay. So since then, I stopped going to grooms parties. Instead of going to my friend's fair grooms parties or bridal showers, not bridal showers, that's for women, not for men. Things like that. I used to be part of a ski group. We would go skiing at Mount Huernhof, and we would go camping together. We would do various different things as a staff group. That was fun. I enjoyed that. I learned some new things I never learned before also. So that's part of my story, similar to Terry's story. Challenges being involved in the hearing world. When hearing world comes to our parties, they feel the same as we do. What'd you say? What'd that say? What'd you say? Oh,
Exactly.
similar situation.
Thank you both. That's very insightful, those answers. And that actually answers one of the other questions in the Zoom chat, which is, did your family learn to sign when you started to become interested in ASL? You both talked about that, how your children sign, but your growing up family, not nearly as much. The next question in the Zoom chat, are you ever approached by strangers who ask to learn signs when signing in public spaces? And if so, do you find this to be intrusive, or would you invite them to learn? Which one of you would like to
Me
address
or
that?
Terry? Steve or Terry, which? Okay.
You can.
Okay.
You can,
Let
Steve.
me- Okay. Okay. Well, need to have a good story. I remember where was I? I was on a bus, getting ready to get on a bus to go home. The lady standing by me. I was looking at the bus, waiting for her to come, and I know she was kind of talking to me, and I didn't understand her. She asked, are you deaf? And I said, yeah. And then I looked at waiting for the bus to come again. She was talking to me again. And then, without looking, she spat on me. She spit on me. And I looked around. I asked her, why'd you do that? She said, because you didn't respond to me. She said, I'm deaf. What did you need? What? She wrote on a piece of paper and said, what time is it? Okay. That's the time. Then I said, well, if you want to talk to me next time, you can go to sign class or go to a PC class or meet a deaf person, ask to teach you sign language so you don't spit at me again. She embarrassed and apologized, of course. I wasn't angry about that, but why spit in the first place? Okay. That was odd. All of my kids, me and my wife both taught our kids since the age 6. I don't know, me 6 months old. And they were raised in the culture. They went to deaf events. They went to activities. They went everything involved. It's like Terry's kids. They were both together. My kids and Terry's kids knew each other well. I mean, mingling with each other. So that was part of the culture. They're called children of deaf adults, as you know, CODA. But Sometimes they would sign for me when a hearing person asks us, sometimes not. Just depends on the situation.
Thank you. I think we have time for two more questions here in the Zoom chat there, and I apologize if we don't get to your question. One question in the Zoom chat: when you were younger, and at times sorry, I want to make sure I read this correctly. At times did you feel frustrated, or were there ways? What were ways that helped you fight through it? So being frustrated growing up.
Karen? Karen?
Well, yes, I definitely have felt frustration, especially with my family. You know, I frankly don't, speak to my family. When I was younger and I came home from school, I just went straight up to my bedroom. You know, I had nothing to do. It was very frustrating for me at times. When I got married and had children of my own, I was frankly very angry, and sometimes I would cry and, about the fact about why was I born deaf into a family that refused to learn sign language. And I went through a lot of, grief and frustration. I had to think about that for a long time. And finally I came to the reality that, I enjoy being deaf. I love the deaf world. It's a beautiful world. And I'm happy to be involved in that. And I'm happy to be deaf. I mean, the world is quiet, and I, see so many things visually. I find so much enjoyment in things that I see. So.
Okay. Well, I didn't become deaf until age 8. I started gradually losing my hearing at age 4, but fully deaf age 8. So I had the ability to hear something. I heard birds, bees, different things, animals, dogs, everything. I heard that before I became deaf. So kind of recycles in my mind sometimes. But growing up deaf, yeah, frustrating. I had hearing aids earlier in life, but that didn't help me really understand sounds, where it's coming from, and where it's coming from. I couldn't do that. But a lot of things I was interested in, for example, electronics. Age 9, I started learning electronics. I converted an HR race car that didn't have lights in front and back. I learned how to connect the lights and back successfully. So that worked. So I went to the school library, found a book, and that's how it led to my career in electronics. But I have to tell you, being deaf is a joy. Why? I don't have to hear a racket out there. I don't have to worry about anything. My wife complains about my loud voice or my noise I make, but what am I supposed to do? I can't hear anything.
Me too.
The cats are always coming to me and meowing. I don't know what they're trying to tell me. I don't hear the meowing part. So I guess that's a deaf person. I walk anywhere without knowing what's going on out there. I can't hear a gun shoot. I can't hear fireworks. So nothing. I can't hear. I'm probably walking by, seeing boom, 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 but I won't be able to identify where it's coming from. So that's life. As a deaf person, if you want to become deaf like me, fine, I welcome you.
Yes.
Thank you. We have time for one last question here from the Zoom chat. The student asks, I am planning on becoming a speech language pathologist. What would you wish speech language pathologists knew about the deaf community? What is the best way to be a culturally competent practitioner within this population?
Me?
To either Terry or Steve. Okay, Steve first.
Steve, you can take it first. This is more you.
That means I'm responsible. Okay. Don't get me wrong. I honorably respect SLPs. Good. I've got started in SLPs when I was in high school. Speech. I've learn how to pronounce words. That was my challenge in high school. 4 years of that. Was I happy about that? No. But went ahead anyway. I did the best I could to learn how to pronounce specific words. I still have challenges with certain words I can't pronounce well. I know it would sound funny sometimes. And people would ask me, what are you talking about? I would say, oh, well, did I say something wrong? But I think for speech SMPs, I think the best thing to do would probably try to help us, what's it called, is separate words to help them match better so I can pronounce it better. I found that tool great. That was really helping me pronounce certain words. My kids, they did that when they were young. They would say, Dad, look at the word. They will space it out, say, what this sounds like, that sounds like, that sounds like. So I learned how to pronounce specific words really well. Still today, some large words that I already know, I know what the meaning is, but I can't pronounce it. I can type it, but I can't pronounce it. That's the challenge with being with SLP. You're great people. I mean, I respect you completely. It's just that challenge. Trying to say certain words in a certain way you're supposed to. Like, for example, the word determine. I can never say that right. Never. Another word, seamlessly. Seamlessly. I can't pronounce that either. Another word was discipline. Discipline. I can't say that right either. Oh, my kids tell me, Dad, no, that's wrong. Okay. Just keep processing, try to learn the best I can.
Thank you. I want to give Terry the last word here. Any closing comments that you would like to leave us with? Again, important things that we should know about the deaf community.
Hey, I'm sorry. Will you do the question again?
I just wanted to give you the opportunity to have the last word here. Closing words, closing comments that you would have us share. What are the important things that we should know about the deaf community? Being respectful, like the previous question we had, being a speech pathologist, for example. How can we show better respect for the deaf community, better understanding?
Okay. Well, the deaf community, what does that even mean? If, say, somebody who can hear sees somebody who's signing and thinks that's really cool, and they're so excited about seeing someone signing, and they come up to that person and ask if they're deaf. And the person responds that they are deaf, and the other person says, "Oh, look, I know a little sign," and so they want to sign with, the deaf person. I frequently would go into a store with my daughter, for example. And like one time I had this woman who was behind me and, was talking. And of course I didn't realize, but my daughter apparently told me that the woman behind me was trying to say, excuse me, quite aggressively and really quite rude. And my daughter turned around and said, hey, my mother is deaf. And this woman just aggressively came with her shopping cart and pushing past me and saying, and being upset that I had not responded. And my mother said, you know what? She's deaf. And so one time my daughter asked to borrow my hearing aids. And of course, I didn't understand why, but I went ahead and gave them to her. And, my daughter, she's a little bit of an introvert. And she doesn't like having a lot of people coming up to her. And she put the hearing aids on while she was riding the bus. And a couple of people came up to her and figured that because she was wearing the hearing aids, she had to be deaf. And all of a sudden, these hearing women started going on and on about what a tragedy it was to be deaf and saying a lot of things that were frankly rather offensive. And my daughter, of course, just sat and listened and pretended that she didn't hear. And then it came to my daughter's bus stop. She got up and she started talking to somebody else on the bus. And of course, then, those two women realized she could hear. And they were very embarrassed. And I realized my daughter likes to borrow my hearing aids as kind of a little test of the environment to see, what people will say when they assume that she's deaf. Anyway, so that's my story.
That's funny. Big time funny.
Thank you so much. I want to thank both of our deaf guests here. I'm going to see if we can go. I'm going to unspotlight the interpreter for a second. Please go to gallery view as you are able. And let's give them a round of applause after the interpreter finishes the sentence. So please give our deaf guests a round of applause in ASL, like so. Thank you. I
Now,
want to thank our guest speakers here. Steve has his hand raised. Closing comments?
now, you all, what? You all go fishing with us, deaf people. How? Get a fishing pole and catch a good fish together as a team of people. We know different than you. We're the same. We just need to learn to come up with each other. That's all.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us here this evening. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.